Today's good question. Sherry asks, why isn't there an east exit from the Mountain Parkway? You have to go west, exit into Winchester, turn around, then merge back onto I-64 east to get to Mount Sterling. It is such a hassle. Well, the Mountain Parkway opened 60 years ago in 1963. When it was built, there were tolls. I know this because my family always called it the toll road, even though I never saw any of those tolls. Now, I asked the Transportation Cabinet about that exit, or the lack of one. They told me it's possible the Parkway predates that part of I-64, which would have made heading toward Winchester the only viable exit. And at the time, anyone going to Mount Sterling would go through Clay City. There was a meeting in 2014 to discuss adding an exit heading east. These are some of the proposed designs. Natasha Lacey with District 7 told me plans for an exit continue. She checked with District 7 Planning and Design, quote, "There is a future project planned with regard to constructing an exit. We are waiting on funding for that work. So in the future, you might be able to head east without first heading west." If you have a good question, you can email goodquestion@wkyt.com. I'll see you on WKYT Mornings.